Welcome everyone to this week in Svelte, and this
Hello.
time not for the not from the country. So maybe, hopefully, we don't we will not have the same problems as last stream. Sorry everyone, but it was fun. I'm Paulo. I will be your host for today, and today with me there is Stanislav, which will also do a bit of showcase. It's a very cool, like, concept how to write. I mean, you probably already saw it from the thumbnail, but how to write Svelte 4 and Svelte 5 code with AI. So if you are interested in AI, stick with us. So I would say, as usual, let's jump right into it. And yeah, let's start with the changelog. So let's see if there's something interesting in this changelog. There is correctly update store where reassigning with operator other than equal. Cool. Probably like they were not updated, for example, with uh, or equal, stuff like that.
Oh, that's cool.
And remove $sign unwrap. Yeah, error on bind these to each block parameter. Oh, that's interesting. Literally an error. Let me see. I'm curious because I think basically this is trying to bind. Uh, oh, okay. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, okay. This was a problem. Like basically, if you had something like this, uh, and you bounded. So, yeah, okay. If you did something like this, it will create a last name element inside here, which is interesting. Very
Yeah,
interesting. Cool.
very interesting. Haven't used code like that before, but I'm sure
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
some use cases for it.
Remove implicit passive behavior from the on directive event. So this is something basically when um, uh, I think basically every not every but some events were given the passive behavior, which means that basically if I understand correctly, you can't prevent the default on passive events. Uh, and this was done basically for performance, but then probably someone realized that there were some problem with having a passive event, always a passive event. This was also fun, like always set draggable through set attribute to avoid weird behavior. I actually wrote this weird behavior because it's very counterintuitive, and I want to show you. Like, let's say that I want to set like this thing to be draggable with normal CSS and HTML, right? So let's say that I want to say that this can be draggable. If I do temp1.draggable, this is currently false. And draggable in HTML can accept two parameters, basically is true or false as a string. But this temp1.draggable is actually a getter or a setter. And so when you set a truthy value to it, so even if it was a string like false, in reality, I'm setting temp1 draggable to false. But what I actually did, if we look at the element, is set draggable to true. So you set draggable equal string false, and the result is that you have draggable equal string true, which is super weird, but it's one of the quirk behaviors of JavaScript. And this basically was fixed in this thing. This is very, very interesting. And by the way, this is basically the perfect thing because last week, before the disaster, I was talking about Svelte component, and during this week, it was made unnecessary. So now Svelte component is not needed anymore in rules mode, and actually, it's not published already, but there is now like a warning if you use Svelte component, a compile warning. because right now you can basically just, and we will see a bit of this later when we do the Q&A, but basically with runes there's no need for Svelte components anymore, because you can just reassign a variable, and if you change the component, that variable will remount the new component, which is super cool.
Interesting. I'd love to see a demo of that later,
Yeah, I will.
because
We
I'm
will.
using Svelte component a lot, so I'm
Yeah,
interested in this
we
change.
will. We will demo. Actually, let's do a very quick demonstration, because there is some situation where Svelte component could still be interesting. So let's say that you have two components, A and let's put and B. So we have these two components. We can import A from a.svelte. We can import B from b.svelte, and let's say that this component is A, and then we can do on click, and we can just do component is equal to B. So if we do this, we don't need to remove this anymore. We can do this change, and here we render component. So and so by default it will render A, obviously, and this was not possible before in Svelte 4. So if you click change, now it's actually rendering the new component. So before you had to use Svelte component. Um, Now there are still some things that may help you, that may like allow you to like, not allow, that may require you to use Svelte component, but you can definitely work around that. One example is, let's say that you want to have, I don't know, you have a const actually let condition is equal $state true, and you want to say that if this is true, if this condition is true, then you want to render A, otherwise you want to render B. You could do Svelte component, this equal condition A or B. So this is something that you could do. And so now if we change condition is equal to not condition, uh, with Svelte component will work. Obviously, you don't have a way to express these in this form. So the thing that you should do, and it's an easy fix, you should just create a derived state. So component, so let me do this. Let me do let component is equal $derived, and then you put condition A or B. So if you do this, obviously they both will change. So that's one thing. The other thing is when this is actually there is a way to fix it, and one thing you should note is that you need to use an uppercase letter for this to work. Like if you use a component with a lowercase, um, it will actually be treated as an HTML element
Right, right, of
in theory.
course.
So you need to use an uppercase component, and this is true even in the other case where Svelte component could be useful. So let's say that we have instead of having a state to be true, let's say that we have let components, and this component is a $sign state. It's an array where we have an array of object where component is something. So let's say this, then you have this and this. So we have components dot component, and we want to loop over components. So let me move derived. Blah, blah, blah. So let's say that we have an each components as comp each, and then we want to render comp dot component. This again this will be an HTML element. There's actually a discussion in place right now in a PR to see if we want to change this behavior. So we want to, if there is a dot in it, we assume that you want to render a component. But the fix here is pretty easy. You just need to uppercase this. So you can do this, and then it's treated as a component, and you have the render of the two components. So if you ever find yourself in a situation like this, just remember that you need to uppercase the first letter. Yeah, that's, I think, all we want to demonstrate. So let's go back to the changelog. Internal compiler refactoring. Yes, there is about some refactoring going on. This is also something that I think a lot of people were asking for. There was actually a bug in Svelte, not a bug, but from a certain version of Svelte, every Svelte kit app had a couple of warning in the console in dev mode because SvelteKit it's using a property that is bind to these, so it's binding to these. It's a property, and this was a runtime warning basically, which is fine. Like it's not a problem in SvelteKit, but there was this warning. So from that to fix that thing in SvelteKit, we had to allow ignoring runtime warning, which is also like a cool feature because there are not so much runtime warning, but enough. So now let's say that, like for example, one of the problem was binding to. So if I have something that is not reactive, which I think is, yeah, we can do it like this. We can do $sign props, and we can get out, I don't know, val, which is an object. What do you want? Must not contain nested properties on computed keys. What? This thing is new for me. Oh no, it's equal. Sorry.
Yeah, because you're trying to type it.
Yeah. So I have this val, and now if I try to do bind these is equal to val dot element, for example, this will give me a runtime warning. I need to remove count. I should be getting a runtime warning here. If I am in dev mode. Maybe I'm not in dev mode. I can't remember how to trigger this warning, but it's fine. Like maybe bind value. I don't know. Let's do input and bind value. Okay, yeah, I'm getting. So as you can see, there is this binding property non-reactive. So this val.element is actually non-reactive. So Svelte is like telling to you, hey, look, like you're binding to something that is non-reactive. This might not be a problem. Like you maybe just want to read the value of the input and you want to store it inside this var.element. You don't want to react to it. You just want to have, I don't know, a function that will read from it. So I don't know, log value and console log val.element, let's say. So in this case, like you don't really care about the fact that this is not reactive. You just want to store the information there. Click is equal to log value. So basically, if you type something here and you log, you can see that it's actually okay. Like you don't need it to be reactive. So in these cases like this, you can actually silence this warning here, which is pretty cool because before it was not possible. And the way to do it is always the same. You can do Svelte, ignore, and then you pass the thing that you want to do. So in this case, if you refresh the page, there's no console warning. that tells you this thing. So you're telling to Svelte, don't worry, I know what I'm doing, and so you can avoid a warning. Pretty cool. And this is true for every run, basically every runtime warning that you can get. There was some perf about action styles and classes, which is cool. This was also very fun because there were a lot of bugs that were running around about this thing, because basically, depending on where you put the bind this on an element, it was causing problem with events and stuff like that. So it was interesting. This is also something like that was okay before. Sorry, there is my son. So this was possible before, and I think it was broke in some release, but now it was fixed again. This also is interesting. Like basically, a document.title effect will be created only if the value is actually dynamic. So if you are using Svelte head and putting the title inside the Svelte head, this needed to be affected so that it was always in sync. But now, if the value is not dynamic, you are just setting the title and is not changing, there's no effect. So it's better because less work. Okay, let's go see if there are. Oh, this was the PR about the binding non-reactive warning that I was talking about. I didn't realize it was merged. So yeah, this was the warning that was floating around, and there is this. You also need to update Svelte 5 to 2.204 for it to be actually effective. So pretty cool. And I think we have some other great TypeScript ESLint 8 final, add legacy method to own component shape. I think there was a recent release of Svelte check that fixed a lot of things. Yeah, very cool. Like so now it's possible to type snippet using JSDoc. Very interesting. Correctly scope snippet declaration. Correctly handle HTML between implicit snippet prop. Yeah.
Seems like a lot of stuff is getting done now.
Yes, and I mean I always say this, but I love when something like this is happening because this means that the focus is shifting from Svelte to all the ecosystem around Svelte, and so this probably means like we are very close to Svelte 5. I know we have been saying this from a lot of time, but now I think it's real. Yeah, that's also interesting. Like there was some iteration mismatch that was happening with plugin Svelte about the CSS hash. Yeah. Also, like for some reason, I think this like there are multiple things related like in this other section. So that was the changelog. Very cool. And now let's switch gear and let's talk about AI. I will remove my screen because it's time for Hermos Stanislav screen because he's gonna showcase a bit of AI with Svelte 4 and 5. So I will leave the stage for him, and feel free to drop any question in. Sorry, there is any estimation when we will see the inspector working in Svelte 5? I think it's already working. Maybe I'm wrong, but I remember some months ago a PR that unblocked the inspector, but we can see.
I saw the warning for it just the other day. I don't know if the warning is incorrect, but it still I think
Oh,
says
then
that the
maybe
inspector
okay.
isn't working.
I think like I don't think it will take too much work to make it work in Svelte 5. I think they're just delaying it because they want to be sure that the rest is stable. Oh, that just was HMR probably. Yeah. Okay, so I'll leave the stage for Stanislav, and I'll add your screen to the stage.
Thanks, Paolo. So I want to talk a little bit today about using AI with Svelte 4 and Svelte 5. It's going to be kind of a relaxed look through all the different methods that currently exist and how you can do it in the best way. So let's get right into it. So today there are actually 3 different ways to prompt an AI. And this you see here, this is the very first way to do it. So the thing that we're all familiar with now is this basic prompting. So you basically open the chat window, you write your question, and you get the results back from the AI. And it does this by using the pre-existing model knowledge. So they train it on all that data from the internet. And this is great. It gives great responses, of course, but there are some problems with this approach. So one problem is this cutoff date, which is like when they stopped collecting the information and started training the actual model. And this cutoff date is always like at least several months like away, like several months old. And sometimes it can be even years behind, like ChatGPT had for a long time, like 2021 as the cutoff date. And that means that it doesn't have anything new. It doesn't know anything about Svelte 5, for example. Now I think they have some newer models that know a little bit more. Another thing that is, it gets like confused about conflicting information. If people like used to do things one way in like kit 1, for example, and then in kit 2 it's done differently. Now you have like multiple approaches that are competing, and the AI doesn't always know how to respond correctly. And also, AI it's if you can think of it almost like a type of compression, like it takes all of this like information online and it tries to compress it into a ball. So it's going to lack like a lot of like very specific information. Like if you're looking for like some very specific documentation that maybe exists only in one page in the Svelte docs, like that's not gonna probably be in the model. It's just gonna offer like general advice. But this is the basic prompting. We have tools like ChatGPT, Claude AI, Llama 3.1 that was just released. So this is okay, but we can do like better than this. So the second way of prompting the AI is to use like something called RAG, a retrieval augmented generation. I saw there was a question. Let's do the questions at the end of the presentation, Paolo. Thanks. So when you use RAG, you combine this like existing knowledge with new documents that you want to add. So in our case, it would be like our source code or our documentation. And the way the RAG works is that when you make a query and you ask something like how do I make a server route, then it goes to this like document store and it tries to find like pieces of information that are relevant to this question. And this works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't work. And the difference is basically like, are you getting the right information or not? Is the RAG finding the correct pieces of information that you need, that the LLM need to answer the query. And for this, we have some really cool tools. So there's continue.dev, which is a VS Code add-on. And then there's Cursor, which is actually like a VS Code fork that it looks like VS Code, but they have like all their own AI stuff inside of it. And there's also custom chat GPTs, which is like when you create your own GPT and then you upload like some documents or something to it, and then you can ask questions about them. This is already much better than just basic prompting, because you at least have a chance to get like up-to-date information. Like if you load the Svelte 5 docs, there is a chance that you're going to get the right part, and the AI is going to be able to answer, like to give a good response to you. That's level 2. And then for level 3, we have this like completely new thing, which is called large context models. So large context models, the problem with like all these like ChatGPT and all these older models is that they can't like take in so much information. That's why we need this RAG. We need to find just the relevant pieces, put them in, and it can't take up too much space. You can't put too much text in. But now with these large context models, you can actually put a lot of text in. So you can put in up to 1 million, as they call it, tokens, which a token is roughly like a word or half a word, something along those lines. And this is very cool because now we can put everything we need into the context. When we do this, like you can imagine that we basically, before we start chatting with the model, we give it like, here is like all of our code, here is our Svelte 4 docs, here's the Svelte 5 docs, and now I want to ask a question. And this is like amazing because now it will like have all of this completely fresh in memory, even the information that it didn't know before. And there are some models now that you can see here on the screen that are now available for this. So specifically to Svelte, like what is the Svelte challenges? Well, like I mentioned, the models are always out of date already when they come out, and Svelte Kit is always changing. You saw the changelog just now. Paolo was saying there's so many different changes happening, and the LLM has no idea about that. So we need to load it with the right knowledge. To do that, we need to find some like new approaches to be able to do that well. So in order to, I'm going to show like two ways to do it. And the first way is using something called the Claude projects, which is kind of like a feature that Claude is like, it's like ChatGPT, but a different company. They have a way where you can upload like a file full of knowledge and basically like chat with that file, and they're going to include all of it into the context. So in order to do that, of course, we can't like upload our entire project into Claude. We need to maybe like take away some files we don't need, maybe node modules, and we don't want to like constantly keep like uploading thousands and thousands of files into it. We want to upload one single file. And I'm going to show a CLI tool that you can use to facilitate this, and we're going to demo it on an actual project. So I thought we could just go ahead and do that now. So let me see here. So when you are using Claude, in the UI, you can create a project. So I'm actually going to work on a tool, I'm going to use it to work on a project that I've been developing that is called the Svelte Kit AI Assistant. This is a little bit meta because this assistant, it's basically like a chat window. This is an open source thing that I wrote. You can find it on GitHub, and you can use it to chat with. You can use it to chat with Claude. Right. So I can say like, "Hello, tell me a joke." And it tells me a joke. So this is just a project, and I want to show you how you can like work on this project using Claude. So first, here's the code base for the project. It's pretty small, like it's just that one screen that you saw. It has the like form handling to show the chat box and such. And now let's say I want to develop with this project in Claude. So I'm going to create a new project called Svelte Kit AI Bot Development. Here we go. And now I can add the knowledge. And here I want to add all of my existing source code, so I can ask it to make changes to it. And I also want to add the Svelte documentation. And in order to do that, you can actually use, for Svelte 4 and Svelte 5, the approach is a little bit different. So for Svelte 4, there's actually this JSON file that you can download from the Svelte Kit documentation page, and I'm sure we can link this in the description for this video. And here it basically contains the whole content of the Kit site, including the Svelte and the Svelte Kit docs. So what I have done is I've downloaded this file, and I have put it here into this like docs folder inside the project. So here's the whole JSON file. And this project is actually Svelte 4, so I don't need Svelte 5 for this project. But if I wanted to do the same thing for Svelte 5, here's the current alpha documentation of Svelte 5. They actually don't have a JSON like this. So what you can do instead is you can go to the GitHub, where they have like all of the markdown files that make up the documentation. So this is the Svelte 5 documentation, but just in markdown instead of here rendered out. And you can use the same tool I'm going to use to put everything in one file. you can use it on this folder and make like one big markdown file with all the Svelte 5 documentation. And I can, if there's time, I can show that briefly, like how you can use that, for example, to migrate from Svelte 4 to Svelte 5 using AI. But let's first focus on this project. So here I have already put it in the SvelteKit documentation. I have all of my files. So the thing I need to do now is to put everything into one file, basically like merge it all together. So for this, I use this tool called AI Digest. And what this tool is going to do now is it's going to create this file called codebase.md. And this file is very, very simple. This file is just like all of the different files that we had before, but combined together. And the next thing, and this will also contain the SvelteKit documentation. And the next thing I want to do is actually to just drop this file in here into my project. Let's see, there we go. And I'm going to drop it in here. And now it's part of our knowledge. So I can also set some custom instructions. This is the same as with the GPTs. You can ask it to like do things in a certain way. And I have a prompt for that, which is basically telling it that you're expert in Svelte and SvelteKit and all of that stuff. And I ask it to print like all of the entire file content if I ask it to change some specific file. You can easily like make a prompt like this by just like asking the AI to write the prompt for you and then just refine it according to your needs. All right, so now we're ready to get started. And so I don't know exactly like what kind of features we want to add. So I just thought that maybe we could ask it to redesign maybe the look and feel of this project. So maybe I don't want it to look so like basic. So I will just like ask it to make it maybe a little bit more edgy. So can you redesign my chat application to have more of a brutalist feel to it? Change the colors and appearance. And so because we have all of the knowledge in here, I don't have to tell it about any specific files that I wanted to change, or even like exactly like step by step what I wanted to do. Like I'm pretty confident that it's going to be able to basically figure this out by itself. So let's see. So it started writing the new code. And it's going to take a little bit of time because there is a little bit of text and CSS. All right. Okay, so it did its job, and yeah, I have some other components like an intro and an outro component that shows like the top and bottom text, and it actually understood that it needed to change those two. But let's start with the first. I'm just going to copy its content. I'm going to go to the page.svelte here, paste that in, and then I'm going to do the same for the intro component and for the outro component. I'm not even looking at what it's done. I'm just pasting it in, and let's have a look at how that turned out. Whoa. So I think it did a pretty good job, considering we just gave it some very vague instructions. This is definitely more brutalist than before, and the chat still works, hopefully. There we go. Yeah. So that's perfect. All right, I'm gonna ask it one more time to do something. Like let's say I want the let's see, the bubbles, the chat bubbles, to pop more and give it more of a 90s GeoCities vibe. And so now I'm asking it to do some like CSS stuff mostly, but you can ask it to build like whole new features. And I could even ask it to make a new server route or a new page, because it understands all that. We have all the SvelteKit documentation in here, so it can perfectly like write a server route if I want to. In fact, we can try it after this. All right, now I asked it to build a little bit more of a GeoCities vibe site. Let's see how it does with that. And I should also say that like now this is a very simple application, but because the context is so big, you can do this also on your existing large applications as well. And it's going to be able to figure out like where all the routes are, where all the API stuff is, and actually make complex features for you. All right, let's see how the GeoCities vibe is going to look here. I'll paste in the main page and then the intro component and the outro component. Okay. It's beautiful. This is glorious. I like this a lot better than the old version. All right. And now just to prove what I told you, let's also ask it to write an API route to actually expose the chat as an API. So I will write, this is great. Could you make a .plusserver.ts API route to expose the chat to my API users? And let's see what it does with that. You see, I'm giving it pretty poor instructions, but I still feel like it's going to be able to figure it out. All right, and let's see. Yeah, it started to write a file. Let's see here. It correctly implemented the post method, typed it correctly. It returns like a JSON correctly. It uses the Anthropic SDK, which we already use in this project for the other chat functions. This looks like a perfectly formed, server out to me. So pretty impressive. Yeah, so this is one way to do it. Another like cool way that I found is this can actually help you rewrite your applications from Svelte 4 to Svelte 5. I have another project that I've created here, which is called Svelte 4 to Svelte 5, and I have preloaded the Svelte 4 documentation and the Svelte 5 documentation. And I basically told it that its job is to like convert components from Svelte 4 to Svelte 5. And then I have some like things that I wanted to do. For example, I want to keep on mount and not replace it with effect. So you can give it like some instructions like that. All right. So what can I do? What I can do next is just to maybe I'll just ask it to refactor this main page into Svelte 5, because this is a Svelte 4. This chat app is a Svelte 4 application. So I will just say, can you refactor this component to Svelte 5? And then I will paste in the whole component, and let's see how it does with that. So whenever you like start a new project, it has to like load in, and it takes like a little bit of time to do that. There we go. All right. It does look like it didn't. This is still AI, so it looks like it didn't manage to like write it correctly into this nicely formatted window for us. Sometimes it fails with that, but I can see that it managed to, for example, convert the the variables to use state. And let's see if it uses like effect here somewhere. Yes, it uses an effect instead of the reactive statement that we had here. It used effect instead. So yeah, so as you can see already, like it's gotten like really far, and thanks to this like long context, we can do a lot with this approach. Even though in this case it didn't format it correctly for us, which is a shame. But we can always ask it to do that again. All right. So that was like one approach to do it, which I personally like really like. Even though it does require a little bit of copying and pasting. There's another approach that you can use to get kind of the same effect, which is to use a cursor. And that was this VS Code fork that I was mentioning. So if I open cursor up, I have the same project running here. Let's see here, and they have this like chat feature built into the editor. Sorry if it is a little bit small. Here we go. And they have like a normal chat, which is you can basically ask it something like tell me about this project, and it will include like the file you currently have open, or like you can even, I think, add like specific files. So now I'm just asking it, tell me about the project with this like one file as the context. And it successfully does that, no problem. But I can't ask it about other stuff, like I can't ask it about the intro component or something because it doesn't like know about it. But they have a special feature called long context chat, which you see here. And when you use this, then you can actually use the special @codebase modifier. So let's see, maybe I can ask it like what colors are used in this project. That's not going to be found in the README. So instead I'm going to do @codebase here. And it's gonna hopefully include, yeah, so you see here, it's trying to include all of the different files in the project. And let's see here, and it does give me, we have to remember now that we changed it to the GeoCities colors here. So it's finding black, white, green, pink, magenta, yellow, cyan, blue, dark blue. That does seem correct. And if I search for one of these colors, yes, it is being used in some of our components. So this is like another approach that you can use, which is like more like you're inside the editor and doing this. Yeah, I think that's it for the demo. I would love it if anyone had any questions, and you're welcome back, Paolo. Let's maybe talk about some AI. I think you're on mute.
Obviously, I am on mute. So I'm here, and to be fair, like this kind of blew my mind, and like especially like this.
Look, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, but there is even like obviously like this like really was able to condense the GeoCities style in a few lines of CSS, which I don't think it's something super easy to do. And even like I like so much the box shadow, the yellow box shadow. Like
yeah, and I love the marquee here that it used.
Fantastic.
Fantastic.
Yeah, the marquee, like it's very very cool. It's a very cool concept. And one question that I have is, I suppose, like having all that context inside the project is not actually costing you more for prompt, right? Because, or is it sending all the information for every prompt?
It depends on how you're using it. So if you use this like first approach with the web UI, that one is like a fixed cost every month. So it's I think €20 or $20 probably. And what they do instead is they have like a kind of a rate limit. So if you add a lot of context, then you're not gonna be able to get a lot of messages that you can send. You can still send maybe 10 or like maybe 15 or 20 messages every couple of hours. So it's not like super strict, but it's definitely like if you put a lot of stuff into the project context, you're gonna get less messages at a time. But I found that that's totally okay, because you can, as you can see, you can ask it to do like several things at the same time, because it's so powerful. You don't have to ask it to like refine things all the time, because it already knows everything. The second method that I showed with Cursor, there you have to pay basically every time you send in the whole code base. You're paying like either to Cursor or to like Anthropic to use the API. That is, I think, more expensive if you use it a lot. But obviously it's maybe a little bit more convenient because you have it in the sidebar.
Yeah. And one question that I have also is like, how confident are you? Like, I mean, for this case, it's just like a demo, and you are just literally copy pasting the component into your code base and not even look at it. Are you? I suppose like the answer is not, but because are you always this confident with the answer that it gives you, or?
When I use this for like in real projects, I don't ask it to make so many changes at the same time. I ask it to do like one thing at a time, like create a component, or like edit this text, or change this logic. And then I actually use Git. So I paste in the new component, I look at the diff. Now the diff is gonna look absolutely ginormous, right? Actually, not as big as I thought, but because you can see here that, for example, or like here is the page one. Actually, you can see it. Sorry, I can't make it bigger. It didn't do like that. It changed a lot of the CSS, but it didn't actually change a lot of the logic, right? It just changed the texts. So actually, like this would be totally fine, I think, because it didn't change any of the like logic up here. There are no diffs in the logic. So that's how I work with it. So I kind of like commit like the changes, or like look through changes, commit them, ask another thing, paste that in, look at the changes. So I'm kind of like a glorified code reviewer a little bit.
Yeah.
Right? Or like pair programmer if you want to be like,
Yeah. Yeah.
if you want to be nice.
Yeah. By the way, I also like I have to say like I am a bit of AI skeptical. Like not so much. Like I'm not. Oh, I will never use AI. I'm using AI not so much, but like whenever I have to do some like brainstorm or like brainstorm for some name, for example, or even just like for I don't know things where I don't have a complete understanding of it. Like for example, I am not very good at GitHub Actions. So, for example, I asked Claude to change a GitHub action to include something. So what I do is I take the code, I search for the thing that is writing. So I look at the diff and I say, okay, he added this thing. Let me see what this thing does, and I go search about that. So I am a bit of a skeptical, but I have to say that like it's definitely getting better, and this is really like I think this will probably be the way when the cost will be probably more effective in the future. This will probably be the way most people will actually use AI with the huge context of all the your application, because that's really cool. And I'm very curious to try to like create some Svelte 4 component that requires some like subtle thing to be converted to Svelte 5 and test it out, because that
Yeah,
would be fun.
I have been doing that actually. I've been converting a lot of Svelte 4 components recently, and it's not perfect, but I blame that on the docs because the docs are very bare bone for Svelte 5
Yeah,
right now.
obviously, like that's just
It
like
just like
the
some of these things, like for example, on mount versus effect, there are subtle differences. They're not really documented, right? They're you would think that on mount and effect would be equal, but there are some
yeah, some
differences there. Like
slight changes, obviously.
well, like
uh,
for example, you have to use like untrack because on mount runs only once, right? So if
yeah,
you
yeah,
want
yeah,
to
sure.
emulate on mount with effect, you need to have an effect and then immediately untrack inside of it, and then put all the code in there. That is more equivalent. So those things aren't documented yet, but they will be, and it's gonna be great, I think, in the
I
future.
wonder if that can be better if you because uh, most of the reactivity code is actually just in a single file. So I wonder if you can feed the reactivity code
Ah,
to let Claude understand the reactivity, because I think signals in general are very powerful. At the concept behind signals are kind of bare bones. Like it's kind of easy to explain what how signal work, but the code behind the reactivity it's also, and also the Svelte code behind the signals reactivity is very fine tuned. Like they are doing some like crazy shit to make it much more performant. So it would be very cool to like feed the whole reactivity to Claude and say, okay, figure out why this is not working. That
yeah,
would be
that is next level. Yeah.
yeah, that would be cool. Let me see. And by the way, I'm also a bit of a skeptical because I obviously love coding, so I would I want to code it myself, so, for this kind of stuff. Let's see if there are any questions, because I think well, first thing first, like the question I actually didn't highlight a question when you were talking. I was just proving your point. So when I prompt Sonnet or ChatGPT, only Sonnet writes Svelte 5 code. ChatGPT always write Svelte 4 code, and that's the context window that you were talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a
Um,
cutoff for Sonnet, maybe a little bit newer, so
yeah,
maybe, but it's still better to put that like Svelte 5 docs in to get like a much better result,
yeah,
even
yeah,
with
absolutely,
ChatGPT.
absolutely. Let me see. What about if we start including some more leaves, like Drizzle or some out and A18 library? Maybe include Stripe and more. Would it still fit in the context of RAG? Any experience with that? Well, I mean,
Yeah,
I think the
so
concept of
so
RAG is like RAG is just. I mean, I don't know how big is the context for Claude. Maybe that's basically the question, right?
Well, so RAG, like there's like separation. RAG is different from like full context. So
Mhm.
like the RAG
Yeah,
was the middle thing I talked about. In
yeah,
RAG, you can fit like an endless amount of things because it will only fetch like a few, of the tasty treats that it needs to write your code. But it's not as good as full context. But if we talk about full context and not RAG, then 200K is like a lot.
yeah,
Like in some big projects I pull in like Node Postgres documentation, and I pull in like capacitor documentation for the app stuff that I have, and a bunch of different libraries I'm using. So I think something like Drizzle and an auth library and internationalization library would be totally okay to add as well into
yeah.
the context. But if your code base is also gigantic, maybe you're gonna start running into problems, like because not everything can fit.
Yeah, obviously. I wonder if there's also like this also poses some question about, let's say that you are using two libraries and both libraries have the same function that does different things. I wonder if we'll be able, like AI will be able to actually differentiate between the twos, or these actually will become a driver for API, like API like when you are designing an API, you maybe should also think about, oh, if I call this function the same, maybe I will not be so smart about my library.
Yeah, it can definitely get confused. Like just I was doing this the other day, and it just like invented a function that doesn't exist, even though I had the documentation in there. So it's not perfect. It can still like make stuff up. But that's where you need to help it. You need to kind of guide it a little bit, maybe a little bit more than I did in the demo. Just tell it to which files maybe to edit, how do you want it to edit them, and so give it a little guidance.
Yeah. And Kevin, shout out to Kevin, he's also saying that he loves Sonnet and it's been using it on the new Svelte Society website. And there is also Captain Codeman that says, I am a AI skeptical. It's great for vague needs like generating images, less good for specific requirements. Well, I mean, I agree. And actually, maybe, like, obviously, like, if you ask AI to generate something, this is an example that I saw recently. Like, let's say that you ask a generative AI to generate a full white image, it will not be able to do that because AI obviously thrive around the fact that something looks similar to. I think it's a bit different with write text because obviously for write text it needs to be a bit more precise. It's still true. Like if you ask for something super specific, like I want a file that looks like this, it will probably not be able to do it. But I mean, like I feel like build me a page that looks like a GeoCity website is pretty it's pretty specific, and I think he actually did a very good job with it.
Yeah, I can just if you're a skeptic, I would just suggest like give it a try. I think it's everything is moving so fast now that just before like Sonnet came out, I was like also a skeptic because I was like, oh, ChatGPT, it sucks. There's no way to like ask it about the whole code base, blah blah blah. Then suddenly, we got the long context models, and now it's so easy to do things that were like literally
Yeah,
impossible just half a year ago.
yeah, yeah, I agree. And I mean, this is even like because I think to be able to do these, you need Sonnet Pro, right? You can't use the like you can create a project with and feeding context with the basic subscription. But I think this is also very true about at least my experience with Sonnet is if I give it a file and I say just modify this file, it will actually just modify that file. Like it's pretty cool. Like the fact that
Yeah.
it will not invent new things. It will not. So it's pretty
Well,
interesting.
there's a bunch of different ways to use this. You can subscribe to Cursor, which give you access to Sonnet as well. You can use the API console, so like you use just the API and you don't pay the monthly fee just for every request. You
Mm-hmm.
can use this like subscription, which was the first way that I showed it via the website. All of them cost a little bit, but
Yeah.
for the but like for me personally, if I am working on a feature, I mean, I feel like not for every feature, but for some features, it can be like 2-3 times faster than doing it manually, especially like if you need to do a lot of front end or you need to do like a lot of writing of boilerplate, that can really be sped up
Yeah.
this way.
I think. Yeah. I agree. I agree. Yeah. I'm still even I know I could probably be 2-3 times faster, but I can't. I want to code. So yeah, I agree. I agree.
There is a loss of control there, and sometimes it's scary. Like I wouldn't write authentication code with AI, but
Yeah,
maybe a button is fine.
a button is probably fine. Yes. Okay, was very cool. I don't know if there's someone asking for some recommended tool links. We'll definitely drop them in chat. In the meantime, the last 10 minutes when I was back from the woods, I actually promised you something, and I want to keep that promise. So let's switch gears and let's go back to a bit of live coding because there was a question last week, which was about how to pass a component to an icon to a button, basically. So I just prepared this very small boilerplate. I have two icons as SVGs. This looks the same here, but it's actually two different icons. And then I have a button. For the moment, this is just the very simple button component where you have all the props and children, which is rendered. So I can do this. So the on Discord, and by the way, join our Discord, svelte.dev/chat. There's a lot of people that talk about Svelte, uh, like dev in general. So and you can ask questions like these that might get answered also in this week in Svelte. So join our Discord. Except for that, let's say that you have this button component and you want to pass it. An icon. So there are different ways, different approach to do this. So let's import the the two icons first, and there are different approach. And like I said in the beginning, thankfully last week my stream crashed because the answer to this actually changed. So the very simplest probably way to do it is just ask for an icon, and you can pass an icon, and you can literally just pass the component. So let's say that I pass home. Inside my button, I can accept the icon, and I have this icon is now a component. So I could use Svelte component for use that, but actually what I can do is I can do icon like this, and I can just do icon. By doing this, I actually get my icon here. And as of last week, so in the latest release, we actually can switch between the two. So let's say we don't need Svelte component anymore. Like we don't need icon. So if let's say if icon, let's pass home. Otherwise, let's pass phone. And now we can change icon is equal to not icon. So by doing this, we can click, and you can see that the icon actually interacts. So this is, in my opinion, the very simplest way to do things. You can just pass the component, and you render the component here. However, sometimes you might want to have a bit more control over the thing. So another thing that you can do is you can actually, instead of passing a component, you can expect a snippet. So snippet kind of replace slots. So if you can do render icon, and by the way, this is something that in theory it shouldn't work. But if you're passing a component, you can still use render. I don't know if this is you will probably get a type error here. And probably if you are passing some prop, it's probably not gonna work. So don't do it. But what you can do is you can actually create some icon prop. So instead of doing this, you can create a snippet, which is called home snippet, and like this. And inside here, you render home, and then you can create the phone snippet, and inside here, you render phone, and then you can pass home snippet or phone snippet. Now, this may look the same, and actually it's very similar, but the advantage here is that you actually have a bit more control over what is rendered. What does it mean is that, let's say that, I don't know, you don't want to render just the icon, but you want to give the user of this button component the ability to change something about the icon. So inside here, I actually have access to all the information. So if I wrap this in a div, for example, I could style the div in this component, and this will apply to the thing, to the actual rendered button. So if I have a style here, let's say that I use, I don't know, color div color is equal to Rebecca purple. Now I can style the icon directly from the parent component. So I also think that it's an interesting approach, and I think that's it. Well, in theory, you could also, like, there is the other way. You could, in theory, just pass a string and then import a different icon inside here. But I would say that these two approach are probably like the component one is probably the simplest because you can just pass the component itself. With the snippet, you kind of need to create the snippet. The snippet is a bit more flexible in the sense that you have more ability to do other stuff. Like, for example, I could say that instead of the phone icon, I want literally the string phone, and I will still get something. Maybe you don't want to have this power, but it's there.
I am super curious. Maybe it's I think too much for today, but I would be really interested to know how to imagine you have 100 icons, and you
Mhm.
want to import them in a way that is SSR friendly, and in a way so that you don't need 100 snippets.
Yeah.
Because there are some ways to do it with Svelte component, but I am quite interested to know how you would do that with this new approach.
Well, first thing first. Now there is also the create snippet. The create snippet utility. So you could, in theory, create the snippet programmatically. I will definitely use import. Like if I'm using Vite, you can use import.meta.glob, for example, to fetch all the components. If they are Svelte component, you can actually just have the array. The only problem, like this is actually a problem that I actually faced because obviously, like, let's say that you have not 100 but 1,000 icon, so it's a lot. If you import 1,000 icon, all the code for all the 1,000 icons will be bundled inside your single file, and that's kind of wasteful because let's say that you have a generic icon component, where you just want to specify the title of the title of the icon, and then that needs to be loaded. It's kind of a waste to load all your 1000 files inside this icon component, because if you then use only one of the icons, you will still load the code for the rest. So one way is to use dynamic import, so that every icon will be in its own file, but that introduces another problem. With dynamic import, you need to await the import, and you can't do it right now, so that's not SSR friendly. So what I did is actually something kind of crazy, but you in Vite, you can import a file, an SVG, for example, as a component, a Svelte component with some Vite plugin, but you can also import the SVG as a URL, and that's different. And so what I did is basically I imported statically all the URL, which is not very big, like it's just 1,000 links. I awaited the component, the import of the component with await. And so I did something like await import component name .svg, let's say. And after the await, so after the then, I will have my component and I can render it like this. Before, though, I can use the component name to look at the statically important URL and literally do emg source component, like components URL at component name .svg. So that basically, like by default, you get an emg source inside your page for server-side rendering and before JavaScript loads. And when JavaScript loads, you actually get the inline SVG, which is much more powerful because you can actually style part of it. And it's also easier, like it's far easier for the browser to render. And this will also means that when you are client-side navigating, you will get the component directly. So
very interesting. I have a while ago, I even think I talked about it on This Week in Svelte. I had a demo of how to do the dynamic component loading in Svelte Kit specifically. That was that was a little bit meta also, because it would actually use the plus page load function, and there you can await, because that one triggers before it triggers on the server, on the client. You can use await. And so you would, like, from the server, send which component to load, like header or a star. And then on the universal load functions, you would have both. You would import only that component. And that actually bundle split every component you had into a separate bundle. But that one used Svelte component, Svelte :component. So that's
but I mean, it's fine because now you can just change Svelte component to actually just render the thing. But the problem with the icon component is that you would need to know in the root which icon you need to be able to pass that as a prop to the icon component. While with these, I actually wanted to be able to use the icon component whenever I need it.
That use case was a little bit different. That was more like you have a CMS and you have 100 different types of content, and you need to just pick out the ones you actually need for a specific page. So then you know, like, what you need.
There's also, some plugin icons on demand that only bundles the icon that you really use. So you can have all the options, and but it only bundles the icons that you really use. I think I actually looked at it. I did find a problem with this. I can't remember which problem I found, but it was slightly different by what I need. But it's a very cool project anyway, and plugin icons is super powerful.
Cool.
Okay. I think, 1 hour and 10 minutes have passed. Again, I can never, like, it's crazy how fast the times goes when you're having fun. So thanks everybody. Thanks, Stanislav. The demo really blew my mind. I will definitely try AI more. And thank you everybody for showing up. I hope you learned something. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and I'll see you guys next Friday.
Yes, thank you, Paolo, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye, guys. I lost my button to to start the music.
We were stuck here forever.
Yeah, okay. Bye, guys.